And we're back once again. Horror Guys.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk, I don't know, Horror Guy Brian, did we see any horror movies this week? Did you see anything good?
We did. We saw 4 movies in a short, like always.
We should talk about them.
Or, if we're on the newsletter, 6 movies in a short.
You betcha.
Because that's the way we roll.
What all we see?
Well, we made a big mistake this week. We watched Oops, You're a Vampire.
Oops, it just happens sometimes. Yeah,
Sometimes it does. Then we went a little crazy with Jacob's Ladder and The House That Jack Built.
Both kind of crazy movies.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
We watched an oldie called The Seventh Victim. I guess you'd call it a cult classic.
Yeah, I guess.
One of the earliest depictions of cults.
Yeah.
And
it was. I mean,
it was.
It has historical significance.
That's all you're going to say.
We'll talk more about that later.
And we'll throw in a really good short this week also.
Uh-huh.
Those are the ones we're going to talk about here on the podcast today. If you are on the newsletter, sign up over at horrorbulletin.com. You'll get all those. Plus, Coming Home in the Dark.
Which was more of a revenge thriller than horror. It touched on horror.
If you're in that family, it's horror.
Yeah. It was a horrible experience for them. Yeah.
And
but I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Also, the Spanish movie, Mexican movie, Frankestein, El Vampiro y Compañía.
And you notice he said Frankestein.
There's no N in that for some reason.
There's no N in it.
Yeah, it's not a typo.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Frankenstein and the Wolfman. Frankenstein, the Vampire and Company. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a Wolfman in there, though.
A madcap sort of trying to be comedy.
If you've ever seen Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, this is exactly the same movie.
Spanish people
done in
saw
Mexico.
That movie and said, hey, we can do that here in Mexico just as well.
They didn't.
Except they didn't do it quite as well.
It was not as well.
Yeah. If you loved Abbott and Costello,
even if you don't love
mediocre,
Abbott and Costello, that's a good movie. It's worth seeing.
Yeah, that one was. This one was, middling. Yeah.
Okay, we'll forego all the usual ads this week, but hey, we got books you can buy, horrorguyshop.com.
You betcha.
All right, let's get right to it. What do we got?
We got Oops, You're a Vampire.
Written and directed by Phil Messerer. Stars Elliot Cahill, Devin Dion, and Chase Gilbertson. Hour and 26 minutes. Trailer in the show notes.
Did you say Elliot Cahill?
Did I?
Ellis Cahill.
Yeah, maybe I did. Ellis Cahill.
Yeah.
Trailer
in the show notes.
This is a bit of an indie film, so you may have to search for. I think it's on.
Well,
Tubi. It was on Tubi.
It's on the major thing. Yeah, they made it. So it's
not one of your big budget theatrical
releases.
What do you call that
though? I mean, it's still an indie, but it's made it to the big time.
It's gotten a professional release.
If it's on Tubi, yeah, professional release.
Oh, don't say if it's on Tubi, it's got to be good.
Well,
that's not a rule.
Tubi has all sorts of things, but anyway, it's out there, easy to watch. It's spoiler free. It doesn't look big budget. And it was kind of strange. The resolution seems to be on the low side.
I think it was filmed on a potato in 1922.
Okay, not that bad, but don't let that turn you off because it is creative and very funny, and it still keeps in the horror genre while keeping all that humor. And the effects and the acting get the job done. We overall really recommend it.
We both liked it a lot. We didn't think we were going into it.
Going in, we had those first
actually
few
it looks
minutes,
pretty horrible in the beginning.
And Brian really didn't like the soundtrack, and I did. We were split on the soundtrack, but yeah, once it gets going a bit,
I suspect the whole
really
thing was
good.
filmed in. I know the thing was filmed in the earlier 2000s. It's just recently gotten wide release. But I think at the time the cameras at the time were not very good.
Yeah.
So it really does have a sort of a blurry look to it.
But don't let it turn you off. Stick with it, and I think you'll enjoy it.
I suppose if you're watching it on an SD TV, it's probably not so bad.
Maybe,
4K. Look.
Yeah,
okay.
You could tell. Yeah.
Well, anyway, either way, we liked it a lot.
But you can't spoil it a lot because it's not new, and yet it's new.
It's newish for most people.
So we won't spoil it heavily.
Nah.
Yeah.
Well, we're told that back in the days of the Mayans, who worshipped the sun, a deity with an they worshipped the sun, a deity with an appetite for blood. They needed a human sacrifice every week. And then Helen comes into Laura's goth shrine and teases her. Mom, Laura's trying to pray to Anne Rice again. And she does. She's got a little throne there with a picture of Anne Rice on it. Well, credits roll as awful goth rock plays.
And I kind of liked the goth rock. So we're split on that.
Goth rock and that kind of stuff just turns me off on whatever it is.
And it was perfectly suited for her character.
Yeah. I don't mean I want to hear it.
Okay.
But anyway, Laura introduces us all to her very strange family. Helen, Raymond, Dad, and Mom, who used to be a Bulgarian figure skater. It all goes reasonably well until Mom and Dad announce that they're separating. Laura walks to town and stops into the Freakatorium, a curiosity shop full of weird things. The owner shows her a new book, the illustrated biography of the vampire Oya. He's a creepy old man with a story to tell. He claims that the Freemasons once had as many as 20 vampires in captivity. I'd watch a movie just with a shopkeeper.
Yeah.
He's something.
Yeah.
Well, it's Laura and Helen's 16th birthday since they're twins. Laura is clearly jealous of Helen, who gets all the boys. Laura does a spell to put an ancient anal acne curse on Helen. Oh, my.
Yeah.
Pimple butt.
Uh-huh.
Well, Helen comes downstairs the next morning with an incredibly bloody nose and passes out. The doctor says all she needs is a good meal and leaves. 2 minutes later, Helen apologizes for being such a jerk to Laura and dies. What a good doctor that was.
Yeah, he did a great job. Yeah.
Well, there's a funeral and everybody cries, even Laura. Raymond, who is a home scientist, has done tests on Helen's blood, and he says that she died from a loss of blood. It just sort of disappeared inside her body. He found a virus that can only be killed with ultraviolet light. He can't tell how long Helen has had the virus. It could have been years. Mom says that this is all God's will, but Laura is less charitable about it.
Yeah, Mom was pretty ultra-religious.
There's banging at the door. It's Helen, and she's covered in someone else's blood.
She's back.
She woke up and killed the mortician, very messily from the looks of it. She looks at Laura and shouts, "You did this to me, didn't you?" Is it the ancient anal acne curse at work, or is it something else?
That's what we're all led to wonder at first for a while. And, did the curse go astray and cause this? Or is it more complicated than that?
And you're going to have to watch to find out, because that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, we're not
Again, this one's you can watch this one for free on Tubi. I love Tubi. It's free with commercials.
Yeah, and the commercials are not too bad.
They're not bad.
Yeah.
Well, the movie, like I said earlier, the movie is a little bit blurry, which I noticed in the trailer on YouTube, but thought that was just a YouTube thing, because sometimes YouTube is dumb.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to
No,
be.
it really is like that.
Yeah.
But maybe it was filmed in low resolution or something at the time. It wasn't terribly distracting, and you get used to it, but it's something.
Well, we're so spoiled now.
Yeah, everything's so high def now.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because there's a lot of interesting little video tricks here and there. And this has been floating around the festival circuit since 2006-ish, and has only recently been released for distribution, so the cameras of the time period probably had something to do with it.
And it's a little confusing on IMDb. There's actually 2 listings for it on 2 different titles.
Yes.
I guess they had some previous release thing and stuff, so yeah. But anyway.
Okay, so there are some neat little Easter eggs in there. Especially watch the Mormons and get ready to pause a couple of times when the Mormons are there.
Yeah, that's a hoot. Yeah.
Not going to talk about what, but there are some visual effects, such as Helen's fangs and Patrice's death, that are kind of limited in number, but they're very effective. Mm-hmm. And Raymond does some awesome lab work. He's a bit of a mad scientist in his tiny little bedroom.
Yep, he is. He's a hoot.
It starts off looking really low budget and questionable. If you've ever given up on an indie film because it looks like crap, this looks like that. But it's worth it. It's really good. Bear with it. It's actually well written, very funny, and worth the watch. Lots of laughs here.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pure comedy if you didn't pick that up.
With horror, though. I mean, there's plenty of gore and not nastiness in it, too.
And our next film is another ridiculous comedy from 1990. It's called Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, this was hilarious. Laugh after laugh.
Okay, maybe not so much.
This is a very grim movie.
Directed by Adrian Lyne. Written by Bruce Joel Rubin. Stars Tim Robbins, Elizabeth Pena, Danny Aiello, and Matt Craven. Hour and 53 minutes trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. They do a lot of practical effects, lighting, atmosphere, and strong acting here. It builds nicely, getting stranger and worse for Jacob as it goes on. And what is going on? You gotta keep watching it to find out. Horror guy Kevin enjoyed it more in this, his second viewing.
Yeah, I did.
It's the first time I'd actually seen it all the way through.
Okay.
I mean, I knew what the ending was, and I knew what the story was, but I hadn't actually seen it.
Yeah.
It was all right.
Shall I tell them about it?
Tell them about it.
I'll tell you all about it. We're going to spoil it.
Spoil it
too,
today. Well, I mean, it's only 30
because it's been
years
33
old.
years old, so yeah. Well, we begin in Vietnam in 1971 during the war, and nobody looks happy to be there. And keep in mind, too, this was only 23 years after that, too, unlike, many more years now. So
1990 was,
yeah, it was
19
22.
years.
Oh, 1990, that's right. Yeah, so only 19 years. Anyway, a helicopter unloads some soldiers, and they get a warning of an impending attack. But several men go into painful convulsions before they can respond. And when the attack comes, none of them is ready for it. Jacob searches the woods, and he gets bayoneted. And he wakes up in New York in 1975. That was just a flashback nightmare. A homeless guy is sleeping on the train, and Jacob kind of missed his stop, and he's in a hurry to get off. Before he gets off, he gets a glimpse of a tentacle coming out of the man, he thinks.
What?
Yeah, but he has to get off, and then he realizes he's gotten off on the wrong side of the tracks, so he gets down onto the rails, which is never a good idea, to get to the other side, almost gets run over, and as it passes, he sees a strange man on the back of the train.
This is a New York City subway, and it's completely deserted.
Which is...
You think that's even really a thing?
It adds to the strangeness, but...
Even at night, I don't think those things are empty.
Happens a lot in these movies.
Yeah.
In movies in general. They get off the subway in New York, and there's nobody there. Does that really ever happen that much? Well, he gets home and talks to Jessie, his wife, and they look at old pictures and talk about Sarah, Jake's ex. He sees a picture of Gabe, his son, who died while he was in Vietnam. And later she throws all his photos down the garbage chute to the incinerator because she's mad that they make him sad.
Wow.
Yeah, that seemed like a dick move.
She's
on her
great.
Part. Yeah. Well, Jake is a mailman, and he goes to see Lewis, a chiropractor, for his back. And they talk about Sarah and other stuff. Meanwhile, Jake flashes back to his rescue in Vietnam. He goes to the VA, but they have no record of him ever having been there before. He runs to his doctor's office, but there's no one there who recognizes him. And the name of his doctor. He's told Dr. Carlson, he died about a month ago. That is right.
Something weird's going on here.
Yeah, so there's all these weirdnesses, little things here, and they keep getting bigger and worse. Well, he thinks he's seeing demons, and he tells Jessie about them. They go to a party, and a woman there reads his palms. She knows a lot about him. He says his lifeline is very strange. According to this, you're already dead. Foreshadowing there. It's a loud, obnoxious party, and he starts seeing things, birds, tentacles, and men without faces. And he just kind of freaks out and, falling on the floor screaming at all these hallucinations. Or are they hallucinations? Well, when they get home, Jessie yells at him about going crazy. And then she finds out he's got a temperature of 106. She freaks out, calls the doctor, calls the neighbors in, get some ice, put him in an icy bath. And he thinks that they're trying to kill him. He's hallucinating this whole time, too. Well, he wakes up in a bed with Sarah, his ex-wife, and complains about how cold it is in the room. He tells her that he dreamed he was living with Jessie, that woman from work, and there were demons all around him. Little Gabe comes in and complains about being cold as well. Jed, his other son, asks for his allowance, and he then goes back to bed with Sarah. And he wakes up with the doctor, Jessie, and their dog. So it's like a dream within a dream, kind of. Well, all through this, we see flashes of Jake's helicopter extraction after being stabbed. Jake wakes up and tells Jessie, "I'm not dead." As he recovers, Jake starts reading books on witchcraft and demonology. Jessie wants him to get out of the house and do something. She's not very supportive, really. Well, Jake gets a call from Paul, one of his VA friends, NOM friends, who needs to see him. Paul says there's something wrong, but he can't talk to anyone else about it. "I'm going to hell. They're coming after me. They've been following me." Jake answers, "I've seen them too, everywhere, like a plague." And then he watches Paul die in a car explosion. Oof. Well, Paul has a funeral. Lots of people go to the party afterwards. Several of Paul's friends from the war think it was a car bomb, but the police say it was an electrical problem.
That's quite an electrical problem for that kind of explosion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, several of the men get really upset when Jake mentions that Paul had seen demons. They all get evasive, like, and it makes you wonder if they're all seeing them and don't admit it. The whole group goes to a lawyer's office to see what happened on that night so long ago in Nam. The lawyer, Geary, he takes their depositions and promises to see what he can get from the Army. But Geary soon calls back and says they don't have a case. He talks to Frank, who says none of the guys want to push this any further. Geary says that Jake needs a psychiatrist, not a lawyer. And he says that Jake never even went to Vietnam. They were discharged after some war games in Thailand. On his way out of the courthouse, two men grab him, force him into the car. And they're with the Army. They insist that he let this whole thing lie.
It's a conspiracy from the government. Black helicopters and men in suits.
Yep, covered up. And he jumps from the car and then gets robbed by Santa Claus.
What?
Yeah, it's just weirdness. But that's, a guy in a Santa suit happened to be there and robs him. Well, they take Jake to the hospital. He rants about getting robbed by Santa. They think he's crazy. Except it doesn't seem to be a normal hospital. They keep wheeling him through and it gets worse and worse. It's like a dungeon full of monsters and gore and bloody parts on the floor. They strap his head into a vise and Jesse comes in to do the surgery. I want to go home, he says. You are home, you're dead. There's no getting out of here. You've been killed, remember? Well, Sarah and the two still surviving sons come to visit Jake in the hospital. He tells her, I'm not dead, I'm alive. He does keep saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the doctors have said that Jake may be in the hospital for months. His back is so messed up. He's in like this traction kind of thing. And Lewis, his chiropractor, comes in forcefully and unhooks Jake from the traction equipment, hauls him out of the hospital, puts him in a wheelchair while the medical staff is all protesting, and just wheels him out to his office. And he works on Jake's back, gives him a bunch of philosophical advice about making his peace, and afterward, Jake can walk. Jake goes home, looks at his honorable discharge papers, as well as photos from the guys in Vietnam, and he flashes back to Gabe's death. He gets a call from a guy on a phone who wants to talk about chemical warfare and wants to meet him. Jesse warns Jake not to go, but he has to. The man's name is Michael. Jake has seen him around before. Well, Michael was arrested for making LSD, but they offered him a release if he went to Vietnam and worked on some mind-altering drugs. They wanted one that would increase aggressive tendencies, something that would tap into anger. And they called it the ladder.
Oh.
Jacob's ladder, yes. And they decided to use the ladder on Jake's battalion as an experiment to see if it was effective. And it was, except they turned on each other. They immediately became aggressive and weren't selective about it. So brother against brother, they tore each other to pieces. It was actually one of Jake's colleagues that stabbed him in the belly. Well, after that, he takes a taxi home. The doorman calls him Dr. Singer, says it's been a long time. And that's where Sarah, Jed, and Eli live. He sees Gabe, who leads him upstairs into the light. And back in Vietnam, the doctor calls it. Jake's dead.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we kind of saw coming.
He argued the point like 4 or 5 times.
We were thinking, yeah, he's dead, and this is all like a near-death experience or something. But boy, what a downer of a movie.
You were dead all along.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, the first thing I got to say about this is that if you pass out at a chiropractor's office, somebody is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's just one long string of one nasty thing happening to Jake after another. It's got some awesome visuals once it finally gets going, but by that point you have no idea what's really going on and what's real and what isn't. I had to say I had a pretty good suspicion after the first time Jake said, "I'm alive, I'm not dead," that he was dead wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The special effects are fairly minimal. The gore bits are well done, but not excessive. And there's a lot that doesn't make sense on the first viewing, but it's all very tense and horrific.
And very good, yeah.
Yeah.
And interesting seeing Tim Robbins, who's usually playing light and, comedic roles, playing something so grim and serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
I don't think he was a huge star at this point.
But usually, you think of him as lighthearted stuff.
A drama guy.
Not drama. Not as much.
Shawshank.
Well, okay, all right. There's been drama stuff, but
All right, now for our short film of the week, we've got one just released called The Dead Collectors. Directed by Brendan Cleaves, written by Craig Gilmore and Craig Toohey. Stars Ivan Kay, Connie Jenkins-Greig, Elliot James Langridge. Around 12 minutes, and you can watch this one on YouTube. What happens?
Well, Grandma is on her deathbed, surrounded by family. Downstairs, the dead collectors are sitting on the couch, and they whine, how much longer are they going to take? The two men talk about their job, collecting dead bodies. Upstairs, Grandma has words of wisdom for all her relatives.
How long is this going to take?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you remember those Bring Out Your Dead guys from Monty Python? Remember those COVID as a government conspiracy nuts? What if the two were the same thing? This one is really well made and exceptionally funny. Possibly my favorite short of the year so far.
Yeah, it was really excellent.
Very well made, very well acted, and it's funny, and it's not as short as that description not as long as that description made it sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that one a lot.
All right, what's up next?
The House That Jack Built from 2018.
I thought this was older than that.
I thought so too. I remember hearing about it at the time it came out, but it just kind of slipped under my radar.
Well, it's directed by Lars von Trier, and that means it's going to be pretentious crap.
No, it wasn't though.
This may be the only thing from him I haven't hated.
I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I did too. It was the ending I thought was a little on the pretentious side, but 90% of it was very good.
Okay.
Written by Lars von Trier and Jen Lee Halland, stars Matt Dillon, Bruno Ganz, and Uma Thurman. 2 hours and 32 minutes, and it was a really good 2 hour and 10-minute movie.
Mm-hmm. 2 hour 32 minutes.
The last bit was probably more than it needed.
There was a bit there that was a little too long.
Spoiler free. What's it about?
Well, this was strange, with Matt Dillon giving a really stellar performance. I think this is the best thing I've ever seen him.
I've never been impressed with him that much, but he was very good here.
I was in this one, yeah. We find out almost immediately that he's a serial killer. And we get to relive some of his highlights in about 5 acts and an epilogue. And it's long, but only seemed that way for one stretch that dragged a bit. And the ending does wrap things up nicely and gruesomely. He narrates.
So we did like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just double check in there.
Yeah, he narrates over, and he spoils it right away that, yeah, he's a killer. And
yeah, it's like
this is what he's about. And he explains why he is what he is. And
we see him evolve.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, story-wise, we get some strange voices talking before the credits roll, and we don't know what they're talking about. But we're told that the narrator will relate 5 incidents that occurred over 12 years. It's our narrator who's talking to a guy named Mr. Verge.
First incident. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Mr.
go on.
Verge.
No,
you
you're
were
good.
Okay. And then the first incident.
A woman flags Jack down on the road and asks for help, but he's not very friendly. He's not very helpful. He offers to call the local blacksmith. Wouldn't it just be like the car repair shop? I've never called a car repairman a blacksmith. Is that a New England thing?
Well, the jack. The jack is broken.
Yeah, well, whatever.
So go to the blacksmith to fix the jack to fix the car. But yeah, wouldn't you
There's
take
machinists and metal workers. I've never met an actual
local
person who calls
blacksmith.
themselves a blacksmith, although I suppose they exist.
a little bit archaic?
Well, she's annoyed at his not having a jack of his own, but he offers to drive her there. She says, well, you might be a serial killer, and she tells him exactly what he'd do to her if he were a serial killer. She's a little annoying.
She is, yeah.
Well, they get to the repair place, and Sonny fixes her jack. On the way back to the car, she keeps going on and on about Jack maybe being a serial killer, even when he offers to change her flat tire. He's very nice. He's very helpful. He doesn't want to be doing this, but he's going along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually has enough of her crap and threatens to leave her with her car. The jack still isn't right, so he drives her back to Sonny's again, and she insults him all the way there. And this time he just kills her with a jack, beats her over the head just like she said he would. Told ya.
Self-fulfilling.
Yeah, she's probably happy she was right. We then cut to a lesson on architecture and Gothic church arches. Jack is an engineer, but he always wanted to be an architect. He tells us that he's recently bought some land and has started building a house of his own design.
The house that Jack built.
We cut back to Jack taking the woman's body into a big walk-in freezer in the city. He then cleans up his van to remove all the evidence. And it was clumsy, it was messy, and he didn't have a clue what he was doing. But he got lucky, he got away with it.
There's a lot of luck involved in this.
Yeah. Second incident. Jack spots a woman walking down the road and follows her home. He pretends to be a policeman and asks her about Carlson's supermarket. She asks to see his badge, but he says he doesn't have it on him. He says his badge is at the silversmith's place, getting shined up. Go polish your badge.
And this is so funny because he's...
This is easily the funniest part of the movie.
He's trying to...
He's very
think
weird.
on his feet.
Yeah.
He's weird anyway. And he's trying to think on his feet and get
She's not
himself in
buying
the
it.
door, and she's not buying it. And he kind of morphs his story as he goes along.
He sees a photo of her husband on the wall and says he might be able to get her pension doubled. He then admits he was lying about being a policeman. He's really an insurance agent. She drools at the idea of the double pension and lets him right in. He then strangles her. That doesn't really work, though, so then he force feeds her a donut until she chokes on it.
Yeah, he's clumsy and inept about it.
That doesn't work, so he strangles her again, and then finally stabs her to death. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
She didn't die easily. Jack then wraps her body in plastic, drags her out to the van, and cleans up inside. He describes himself as a murderer with OCD with cleaning compulsions. He goes back inside and cleans some more. Then he goes back inside and cleans some more. Twice.
Yeah.
No. He goes back inside and cleans some more for a third try.
Yeah.
It's evening now. He's probably been cleaning for 30 hours or something. A policeman drives by, so Jack pulls the body out of the back of his van and puts it in the nearby trees. The policeman then asks him to get out of his car and questions him about a break-in down the street. Jack says the woman in the house, Claire, has gone missing. The policeman looks inside the van and then inside the house. The cop then makes him leave, so Jack gets back in the van and drives away. But he's got the body tied with a rope to his bumper.
And drags it all the way there.
Miles and miles dragging this dead body down the road with the bumps and oh my.
This is loaded with grim, dark humor.
There's not much left of Claire by the time he gets to his meat locker.
And he left a trail.
A big
all the
red
way
bloody
there.
trail all the way home.
But it starts
rains.
pouring rain.
Yeah, he gets lucky again.
Yeah.
Then we get a flashback to young Jack as a child, snipping the legs off of dumplings.
Ducklings.
Yeah, dumplings don't have... He picks up little ducklings and cuts their legs off.
Just one so we can watch them swim in a circle.
Oh, okay, I didn't pick up on that part.
Yeah.
Well, time passes, and we see that Jack eventually learns how to strangle women properly. After several more murders, Jack says that his OCD started diminishing, and he took bigger and bigger chances. We learn about Jack's obsession with photography, especially the negatives. The third incident. Jack takes a woman and her kids out shooting. He talks to them about hunting, which he finds distasteful. He goes on and on about how awful hunting and hunters are, and then he brags about how he applies ethical hunting rules when he hunts the family down. He tries to do taxidermy on the children. Oh my, they're nasty.
Yeah, that's just awful.
We see that Jack isn't happy with the cinder blocks he started building his house with, so he has all that torn down and starts building again. Throughout the movie, we see him tearing down that house and starting over. He's just not happy with it.
And he mentions early on, too, that he had a sizable inheritance, so apparently he's got more money than he knows what to do with, too,
Yeah.
and he can just, hang around and do whatever he wants to.
The fourth incident, Jack talks about his romantic interest in this one woman. This one has a name, Jacqueline, but he just calls her Simple. He clearly thinks she's stupid, and she doesn't do much to prove otherwise. He admits to her that he's killed 60 people and that he's a serial killer, and she just calls him weird. Well, he gets a magic marker and draws butcher's meat cutting lines. I'm sure those things have a name.
But, yeah, we know what they...
the dotted lines where you're going to cut the meat apart.
Mm-hmm.
On her body as she sits there and watches. She runs outside to tell a cop, and then Jack runs out and says, "Yep, it's all true." The cop thinks they're both drunk and drives away. He makes her scream repeatedly to show her that the neighbors won't get involved. They're in like a big apartment complex with like dozens and dozens of rooms above and below them and around them.
And nobody comes to help.
Nobody turns on the lights. Nobody looks.
Yeah.
It's a great place.
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously getting more and more reckless. The whole thing is being narrated to Mr. Verge. And Verge finally asks, does Jack hate women? He says no, he's killed men as well. He's torn down his house and started rebuilding several times more. And the two men talk about art, icons, the Holocaust, and many other things.
And that's where I think the draggy point was.
Yeah, a lot of
that went on a bit too
the whole
long.
Verge, Mr. Verge thing is boring.
Oh, it was interesting as it was, but at that point, I think it kind of dragged.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to argue with you there. It did.
Yeah.
Well, Jack kidnaps a man and takes it. Fifth incident. Takes the man to the meat locker full of bodies. And there's a lot of bodies in there now. And he said he killed 60 people. He was probably not exaggerating.
It's quite a large, room-sized meat locker.
And there are several other men, probably 5 or 6 of them there, chained together and freezing. Still alive. He wants to experiment with killing multiple people with a single bullet. He's got all their heads like chained to a sawhorse or something, all in a line.
In a row.
How many heads can the bullet go through before it stops? Well, one prisoner tells Jack he's using the wrong kind of ammunition.
That's not Full Metal Jacket.
No! Jack returns to Owl's place and angrily complains about the mislabeled ammunition. Owl wants to see a receipt. He gets really nervous about the whole transaction, and Owl knows something is wrong. Jack goes to see SP, an old man who says the police visited both Owl and Jack about what he's done. They're on to him.
Mm-hmm.
SP holds Jack at gunpoint as he calls Rob the policeman to come over. Well, they've known each other for years, so Jack and SP sit and have drinks, and then Jack sticks a knife in the old man's head. Jack leaves with one Full Metal Jacket cartridge, as he wanted all along, and Rob the policeman shows up, and Jack kills him and steals the police car. He drives the police car back to his meat locker place and asks the man inside the quality of his ammo now. He's got the right thing.
And he does.
But he leaves the police car outside with the lights and flashers still on.
Yeah, and you hear more sirens coming. They're closing in on him.
Well, he loads the gun on a special tripod with the men all bound up in a row. As he messes around with measurements and getting more room for his shot, more and more police show up to investigate the car outside. As Jack gets ready to pull the trigger, he finds Mr. Verge in the back room of the meat locker. There's like a secret room back there that he'd never bothered opening until now. Verge asks Jack about building his house. Whatever happened to that? Well, Verge suggests that Jack can find the material he needs to build his house right there in the meat locker.
So he does.
So Jack builds his house out of the many frozen bodies he has there. You don't need wood. You got the logs of the dead people.
Yeah, and they after he's done working, they show the whole thing. Yeah, it's a little teeny, little teeny house
made of bodies.
Made of bodies.
Well, the police cut their way through the barricaded door, but Jack goes into the meat house and crawls into a secret hole beneath the floor. Which takes us to our epilogue. Jack and Verge are in a dark place. They travel in the tunnels down, down, down into another world. As they travel, they hear a humming buzz getting louder and louder, and Verge says that it's the sound of millions of souls in hell suffering all at once. They proceed on, with wilder and wild imagery down into hell. Jack asks about a stairway out of hell that's across a broken bridge. Jack thinks it's probably possible to climb around the pit of lava to get there, and he starts climbing. Will he make it? We'll find out.
You have to watch to find out.
Well, the first killing is pretty routine as far as these things go, but the second one, Jack's OCD pumps up the ridiculousness factor, and it becomes a straight-up comedy for that segment. Matt Dillon does really well here. His weird manner of speech really shows us that he's a psychopath. I mean, you've heard him in other movies, and he's perfectly normal, but here he kind of talks. He sounds like a psychopath.
He's not very normal here. Yeah.
It was really starting to drag during the speechifying after the fourth incident, that part where Kevin said it got slow. The Faustian ending makes up for the show a bit in the middle. It's just plain bizarre. Neither of us had seen this one before, and we both definitely liked it and recommend it.
Yeah, we did.
And Mr. Verge is played by Bruno Ganz. Best known for playing Hitler in that funny meme.
Yes, he is.
Man, Hitler gets upset over everything, don't he?
He does, yeah. Just change the dubbing and change the subtitles. Yeah.
All right, one thing he wouldn't have gotten upset over was The Seventh Victim from 1943.
That old, huh? 80 years old.
It's really old,
Dang.
yes. Directed by Mark Robson, written by Charles O'Neill and DeWitt Bodine, stars Kim Hunter, Tom Conway, and Gene Brooks. Hour and 11 minutes. If you haven't seen this, there's a trailer in the show notes. And this was I found this on a list of, hundreds of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Movies you must see before you die, kind of thing.
Well, horror movies you must see before you die, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't that impressed with it.
No, it was so tame.
Spoiler free, it's well made. It looks sharp in black and white. May have been restored at some point. And it is very, 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 very tame.
By today's standards, yeah.
Yeah, nobody builds a house out of bodies in this one.
No.
Things change toward the end that slow things down even more. There's a horror element of devil worshippers in the cult, but they're not scary. These are the most civilized cultists I've ever seen.
They are very civilized people, yeah.
The entertainment value is kind of limited for a modern viewer, but I guess the basic plot is pretty cool. What happens?
Well, we open at a private all-girls school. The headmistress calls Marianne and tells her that her sister Jacqueline has gone missing. No one has paid Mary's tuition for 6 months.
The only reason we're telling you that your sister is missing is because nobody's paying your bill.
Yeah. Well, they offer her a job if she wants to stay, but Mary wants to go home and find out what happened to her sister. Her friend warns her that if she leaves, she should never come back, and if she does, she'll never get out. She leaves. That's some school.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Mrs. Reddy says Jacqueline sold the business to her about 8 months ago. Mary goes to the company where Jacqueline was running, except she's not there now. Well, Mrs. Reddy has done really well with it. She runs into Frances, who didn't even realize Jacqueline was missing. Frances says she saw her at a restaurant last week. The lady who runs the restaurant says Jacqueline rented a room from them, but she's never come back. Well, they open the door and look inside. There's a chair with a noose above it, but no body, and it's just weird. Well, as she talks to the police, Jason Hogue, a poet, is there hitting on her. Mary goes to the missing persons department and talks to them about her sister. We see that there's some shady characters who want to keep Jacqueline's disappearance quiet. It's kind of weird. Well, we go to Gregory Ward, Jacqueline's boyfriend, and he wants to do anything to find her. Mr. August, a detective, says he wants to help. He says Jacqueline deeded Mrs. Reddy the business as a gift.
Oh, sure she did.
Yeah, didn't sell it, just gave it to her. But why? Well, Mr. August soon ends up very dead, and she sees a couple men carrying out his body later. Gregory Ward gets Mary a job as a kindergarten teacher. Dr. Judd comes to see Gregory, and he says Jacqueline came to him for money. She can't come see Gregory because it's dangerous, and she's in danger of losing her sanity. So the doctor offers to take Mary to Jacqueline. When they get to his place, Mary's sister is gone.
Well, I just kind of fogged out through all that. Some people talked to some other people and some things happened.
Yeah, mysterious things and trying to find her, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jacqueline finally shows up, and then vanishes almost immediately again. Paul Rideau says he's a private investigator hired by Gregory Ward to find his wife. When confronted, Gregory admits that he and Jacqueline are married. He had
This was a secret before.
Yeah, that they were boyfriend-girlfriend. They're actually married. Well, Jason the poet invites Mary and Greg to a party at Natalie's house. Dr. Judd is there. Judd and Jacqueline have been getting suspiciously close recently. Jason finds out that both Mrs. Reddy and Dr. Judd have been reading books on the Palladists, which is a society of devil worshippers. There's a related symbol that Mrs. Reddy has been using in her trademark for the company. Mary asks Frances a bunch of questions about Mrs. Reddy. The old woman gets kind of upset. Reddy then warns Mary to give up looking for her sister. Your sister is a murderess. She killed Mr. August. You don't know what dreadful things you might bring about by looking for your sister. Well, a group of people get together to discuss the situation. And they're just so polite and civilized. These are the devil
It's just
worshippers.
people wearing dresses and suits and,
hanging out and
hats and
having,
sitting around cigars and drinks. And,
having just a civilized meeting. Well, they have a rule of nonviolence, but whoever betrays them must die.
But they won't kill them.
But they won't kill them. Well, Reddy and Francis are there, and they're all sworn to secrecy. Since their order was founded, they have had 6 betrayals, all of whom were killed to ensure their silence. Jacqueline may be the 7th victim.
Ooh,
that's where the
there it
title comes
is.
from. Yep. Well, Francis swears that Jacqueline didn't betray anyone by going to Dr. Judd. Mary says goodbye to Jason. She's going to return to school. Jason figures out that Reddy has intimidated Mary. So he calls Gregory, who's a lawyer. There's a lot of people in this.
It's really not, but it's just back and forth between all of it. It does seem like a lot of names.
Yeah. Well, the 3 of them debate taking Judd into their confidence, but decide to risk it. Judd is creepy, and he finally does take them to see Jacqueline. Jacqueline admits that she was one of the Paladists. It sounded exciting and fun, but they wouldn't let her quit. They wanted her to kill herself and kept her prisoner for months. Jason points out that Gregory's in love with Mary, but he doesn't want her to know that.
It sounded exciting and fun. Mm-hmm. Does it look exciting and fun?
It looks like a
bridge club.
It looks like a polite club where you just go and hang out and have smokes and cigarettes and chat with these other people.
Yeah, they don't do anything.
Yeah, and the death thing, they the betrayers must die, but they don't do it. They entice them to kill themselves.
Yeah.
So okay,
you have betrayed us. You should kill yourself.
Yeah, and we'll keep encouraging you to do that until you do.
Staring contest,
Yeah. 2 strange men come for Jacqueline the next day. The Paladists have captured her in order to execute her. Well, not really. There's a cup of poison in front of her, and the others egg her on to drink it. They won't kill her, but they insist she should kill herself with the poison. Well, she doesn't, so they get tired of waiting and release her. Because what else?
Not going to kill you.
What else
kill
they
yourself?
Gonna do?
Kill yourself. Kill yourself. You're not going to kill yourself?
No.
Okay, you can go.
Well, okay, I guess you can go then. Yeah. But they warn her they'll be after her again soon. It's kind of lame. Jacqueline runs into Mimi at the hallway of her building. Mimi says she's dying, but Jacqueline says she's always wanted to die. She goes back to her room with the news. Jason and Judd go to talk to the devil worshippers, and they mock them as losers. Mary says she's willing to get together with Gregory, but Jacqueline is his wife. And then in the next room, Jacqueline hangs herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because reasons.
Because wrap up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was Kim Hunter's first role. She got an introducing credit. Mm-hmm. And she was in lots of things. She was the Zira in Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah.
And lots of romantic roles long before that. Mm-hmm. I think she played a monkey long after she was getting a little older there.
Lots of stuff.
Dr. Judd was played by Tom Conway, not Tim Conway. That's a different guy.
Yeah.
He reprises his role from Cat People from the previous year. So this is unofficially in the same universe, but he was Dr. Judd in both movies, and it's the same actor. But since he dies in Cat People, this would have to be a prequel to that.
Okay.
But he was into the cult things. The Paladists must be the tamest group of devil worshippers ever put on film. They won't hurt anyone. They just want to glare at you until you drink poison. This was a pretty good mystery until they actually found Jacqueline, and then it slowed down to become a real slog. And that ending was not what we expected.
No, that she was like, I'm not going to kill myself, and then she goes kill herself.
Yeah.
Why?
Because pressure.
Okay.
Still, it was one of the very first films to deal with cults in a serious manner, and the people who were members were civilized, not a bunch of raving lunatics. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see the other cultists, and they're like the devil worshippers in the old,
dressing
yay, devil, yay, devil.
Yeah, chanting and dressing in robes.
Yeah, it's not very realistic.
Yeah.
But it was awfully tame, though. Tame past the point of being boring.
Pretty much. I wouldn't call this one of those films you must see.
I guess it was influential with the cultists at the time, but it's not fun today.
First time for cultists, and But, meh.
Okay, then over on the newsletter, which we're not going to read here today, we've got Coming Home in the Dark, a film from 2021. This was it Australia, New Zealand?
No, New Zealand, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It was horrifying, but not. Kevin didn't think it really was a horror movie. I think it probably was.
Okay.
It's a kidnapped family story. If you thought
The
Funny
Strangers
Games was
or
a
Funny
horror
Ga- Okay,
games.
more Funny Games,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh-huh.
If you thought that was considered horror, then you'll certainly agree with this one. It's definitely a tense story. It's an interesting study of how twisted and damaged people can become. It was well done with strong acting, good effects, and some real brutality.
Mm-hmm. I liked it.
Kind of like Funny Games, only with an actual motive. They weren't just crazy people.
Yeah, you found out why they were like they are. Yeah.
All right, then we also talked about Frankestein, I can't even say it.
El Vampiro e Compañía.
1962 movie, which translates to Frankenstein, the Vampire and Company. Stars Manuel Loco Valdez. You know, if you got Loco as your middle name, it's going to be wacky.
It's going to be zany.
Yeah. It's basically Abbott and Costello in Spanish.
Only not as good.
Only not as good. No,
Yeah.
yeah. It's all right.
Yeah.
If you speak Spanish, it might be better than me trying to do the translation. But,
Well, that
yeah.
probably would have helped. Yeah.
No, I don't think it was really that funny to begin with.
Yeah.
All right, so head on over to horrorguys.com. Check out you can sign up for the podcast, subscribe for the podcast at horrorguyspodcast.com, buy our books at horrorguysshop.com, check out the newsletter at horrorbulletin.com, or just read our daily movie reviews at horrorguys.com. Or if that's too much for you, horrorguys.com has links to all that stuff.
It does. That's the easy way to go.
That's the easy way, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.